Hey there, my name is Rachel Kalaki.
I'm Annie.
And I'm Shelby. And welcome to the Magdala podcast.
We know from experience that pornography, masturbation, and other sexual addictions are not just a guy problem.
The need for women to be accompanied in their journey toward healing from addiction has gone sorely unmet, and that's why we're here.
Magdala is a space where women can find hope, healing, and freedom from sexual addiction through support, community, and accountability.
Here on the podcast, you'll find everything from testimonies to practical advice to discussions on how to live fully as a Catholic woman.
You are not alone, and wherever you are on your journey, we welcome you to this table.
All right, record button is on. We are off and running. Sister, hello. Welcome to the Magdala podcast. Annie's here too. Hi, Annie. Sorry.
Hey, everybody.
How is it going?
Hello. It's so good to be here.
We are so excited to have you, sister. I feel like we've talked about this I was thinking a few minutes ago, I was like, how long have we talked about doing a podcast episode? It's got to be close to a year now.
I really think it has been, actually. I feel like this is kind of full circle.
It's been a year in the making. But
Yes.
Okay, so for those who don't know you, sister, go ahead and introduce yourself. Where are you from? What are you in? What's your full sister name? Hit us with it all.
Yes, exactly. So, full name is Sister Mary Caterina Vola. Go by Sister Caterina. And I am a sister of St. Francis of the Martyr St. George. So long name, go by FSGMs, and we're Franciscans. So great stuff. And I am currently living in our convent in St. Louis and working to help with just staff development formation at a current facility, but also on the side, apostolate, which is a lot of my involvement in this situation, is that I've had the opportunity to help women, both lay and religious, in the area of sexual healing. So
Amazing. And we'll get into how you got connected with us in a minute. But first, if I was like standing in an elevator with you and asked for the elevator pitch of your vocation story, what would it be? Let's go.
yes, I love that. Great. The really brief version. I was taught by sisters as a little girl in grade school. And so they were just always a part of my life. And then I think I just really loved Jesus and wanted to get married, all the kind of normal things. And then when I was 16, I really felt seriously called to be a sister. So that's when I really began discerning it, more intensely, I would say, and really feeling that tug on the heart. And then I met our sisters shortly after high school and just really began discerning with our religious community and felt called, especially we have a devotion to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And so just that gift of the love of Jesus and his mercy being poured out from the foot of the cross is really where we find ourselves. And so that really drew me, and just the joy of the sisters in our community life. So I entered our community after going to college for a year and just really, again, feeling the Lord's tug that was the right timing. So I have been a sister for about 15 years now.
Oh, that's amazing. Praise
Yes.
God. Praise God. All right, segue on mercy. How did you get connected with Magdala? I know the story, but I want everybody else to know the story.
I know. I was thinking about this story and getting ready to do this, and just how amazing and spirit-led this really was, that I could not make this up. So yes, I first met Magdala actually through a connection with Kelsey Skoke, who that was also very spirit-led. I didn't meet her in person to just start off that. So it was very spirit-led how I happened to meet her, was in conversation with her, and she told me about Magdala Ministries. And so I thought, oh, okay, I think maybe I've heard of that. So I went online, was curious, and just had really been praying for this intention for women in need of sexual healing. So that had just been growing in my heart, especially through my own journey that I'd had. And so I went on the website and thought, oh, I'll just sign up, for the newsletter. I'd like to kind of keep up to date on this, pray for this. And so I thought that that's probably where it was going to stay, that more wouldn't happen. And you all were having a live panel with your board and your team to answer questions for women that were coming in, actually. And so I saw that and I thought, oh, I'd really like to listen to that. And so that's how Kelsey Skoke then connected me with Rachael. And I was able to listen in on that. And there was actually specifically a woman who was discerning religious life. And so that's why I actually kind of feel like this is really full circle, because that's actually the topic that really connected us to begin with. And so afterwards, I just said, Rachael, sent a little message like, thank you for letting me, listen. I honestly didn't think I was going to get a response back. And Rachael, you really, reached out after that. So.
Yes, it's been awesome since, because we had really been praying about our religious life curriculum, which is a project that you have had such a hand in, sister. Like, you were indispensable in that process. For our listeners, our religious life addendum to our curriculum that we use in small groups is forthcoming. It might be out right around the time this is posted, actually, but sister essentially wrote this curriculum. I wrote a little bit of it, but it's mostly sister's heart in this curriculum. But I had been praying about the addendum and for the Lord to send us the right sister to write it. And you just dropped right into our lap. So it was literally perfect. But sister, I know Annie and I have both had our own discernment journeys of vocation. Obviously, listeners probably know I'm married. Annie's engaged. We talked about that a little bit already. But Annie especially had a very intentional time of discerning religious life. I did as well in college. So we have probably our own perceptions of this, but I'd love to hear from you. Just what misconceptions do you see? What judgments do you see around women in religious life, or women discerning religious life, and sexual sin? And how does that affect both parties, both women in religious life and those discerning? What's kind of the crossover that you see, and how does that affect how women approach Jesus in their vocation?
Sure. Yes, I agree. I think those are really, there's a lot in there, to respond to and to, speak about, because I think they're just for a long time. Well, I know you all have spoken about just for women in general. So, just we're finally at this point, I feel like, where there is a lot more acknowledgement for women. There's still, I feel like, where you run into people where it's just like, this is so new to them that there's actually a community out there, whether it's through Magdala or just other women that they're maybe connecting with, particularly through the church. And that's such a new experience for them to discover that. So especially now, I feel like that phase of just reaching women is now starting to overflow to religious women as well. So I think a lot of the misperceptions and judgments just come from, really that understanding of our humanity. So not putting, I think we especially do this as priests, with priests or religious, just kind of putting us on that pedestal. We can do that to ourselves, or that pressure that's there. And so I think it's just a lot of the pressure that has come from the idea of what it means to live a life of consecrated chastity, belonging totally to the Lord. But that doesn't mean that we've entered perfectly. We make other vows too of poverty and obedience, and no one is expecting that we're living those perfectly. So, of course, there's always that goal, there's always that growth happening and that desire to, but we have weaknesses. And so I think just really being able to acknowledge the humanity is really that first step that I think I've been seeing happening, or when you do see it happening, that's really, what creates the open door to get past any judgments or misperceptions that come with, living a vowed religious life.
Yeah, I like the point that you make about the other evangelical councils not being perfect in most real lives. Like for some reason we expect perfection only in the realm of chastity, which I think applies to just how we see sexual purity, whether religious or lay. Annie, I'd be curious for your thoughts here of like where do you see some of the misperceptions and judgments, and how did that kind of play into your own discernment journey?
For sure. One thing that comes to mind sort of directly, I remember having a misconception, and people sort of even speak into the idea that if you are not a virgin, then your vocation has been determined for you. I remember hearing, not necessarily someone speaking towards me, but I remember hearing essentially that someone is sharing part of their story, that
Yeah.
sexual promiscuity was a part of their story. And somebody made an offhanded comment of like all of that will be fine when you're married. You know, that like that marriage will fix that.
Right. Right.
But I heard it from the lens of that this was a woman who was like sort of entering into, oh, the Lord could be calling me to anything. And it was sort of, again, a vocational word. You know, we're taught in formation not to like speak that into people. And in that case, I remember feeling sort of hurt for her because it poked at that huge wound in all of our heart of feeling not worthy before the Lord, which I guarantee you almost every woman who's discerning like goes through that wrestle. Like, how could Jesus be calling me because I am X, Y, and Z, and the list goes on and on. So I remember experiencing that misconception. And then you get this added layer of if a woman's story involves pornography and masturbation, the secretive nature of that. A lot of women aren't even addressing that until they like have to at the bare minimum when they're sitting down at the order, they're finally ready to join and someone asks them about it. And then they're like, shoot, I finally have to address this. I have to do something about it. Some women, the first time they're sharing it, is in that experience. I'm so thankful we're doing this episode just because I've shared this before, but me and Rachel are the ones who are the only ones on our team who get to see the stories of women who are reaching out to our community. And it's a very common story to see well, I was talking to my spiritual director or an order that I was discerning with, and they said, I just need to receive deeper healing in this area before I can move forward.
Yeah.
That this is one of the major roadblocks of entering into a vocation that the Lord could be calling you to. So I think there's this huge misconception just around sexual sin in general. Obviously, a sister said that women experience it at all, but somehow that sexual sin like keeps you from a religious life vocation, as if a history of sexual sin then predetermines your vocation, which is not true.
Yeah.
Exactly. Not true at all. Right.
Yeah. And I think different communities have different guidelines on this, but I know some women in Magdala's community have like been outright rejected from orders for either not being virgins physically or just simply having a history of sexual sin, whether or not it involved a loss of their virginity. So I think there's just a lot of shame wrapped up in this and a lot of fear, like Annie's talking about. Sometimes the only pastoral encounter these women have had is with the religious order that they're reaching out to. And sometimes those encounters are not receptive or helpful. And oftentimes they are. Like, I think it's worth saying many orders are prepared to receive women really well in this topic. But I think because we are just getting so used to this being a thing, like I tell people about our religious life curriculum and they're like, you needed to have that. And I'm like, yeah, go check your stereotypes at the door, bro. Yeah, I usually respond with like, do you think priests need this sort of help? And they're like, well, yeah. And I'm like, okay. So why would it not go both ways? But thus our judgments are deep seated. But sister, I'm curious, just kind of, you can share as much or as little of your own story as you want, but just how did this kind of play out for you personally in your own heart of like the identity as bride and your own story with healing?
Yeah, no, that's great. Yes, definitely. So it's really interesting because with my story, especially again, and getting ready for this podcast and just thinking through a lot of these things and praying through it, I was thinking about how my personal that actual discernment journey of religious life, my level of awareness of my history of like the sexual trauma, just the trauma involved, kind of my story, the wounds, like all of that goes into the self-knowledge of struggling with an addiction or struggling with sexual sin. It really just wasn't in the forefront of my heart and my life for me to really have that knowledge to be forefront from the get-go. So I think, and I've talked with various others as well, other sisters too, and hearing just about their stories. And I'm sure just like you were both saying, and hearing about it through, those coming to you in the Magdala community, and thinking about how, some may be more aware of their story and their need, but a lot of times, maybe it's just, at this stage when they're finally kind of like, okay, I want to make this commitment. And now I really have to face this. Like, it can't just be something that has been, whether it's more in the past or you feel like it's something you're kind of active in, or suddenly because of spiritual warfare, like, maybe you've been okay, but now like you're really wanting to enter a community. And so suddenly you find yourself starting to battle with things again. It's like, oh my gosh, what do I do? And that's where that honesty really comes in. But yeah, so for my personal discernment, it wasn't as forefront. And so I think that's just where I was at. And so I was actually doing okay. I wasn't struggling specifically with any of my sexual addiction when I was getting ready to enter. So praise God, that was, where I was at, and things like that. So, and then later in the convent, still earlier on, but later, I did have a relapse. And so that really, I think, scared me because one, it was a relapse, and then it was kind of a continuous, relapse. And so I thought, oh my goodness, there were just so many fears, running through my heart, which is very common for sisters. Of, I thought, I'm going to be kicked out. I can't tell anybody. Just the shame, and a lot of, Annie, what you had mentioned, I think goes for women, just depending on where they're at in their journey. So the more self-aware you are, whether that's, you're actively discerning a religious community or you're actually a sister already, there's that, the shame and the beliefs that I'm not worthy, or especially I remember feeling at one time, like, I don't know why Jesus would want me, I just feeling like I have nothing to offer. And that it also meant just that I was incapable of love, maybe like in interacting with people and things like that. So, and the distance, I think that can then come of feeling like you're really living in duplicity, because again, as we were mentioning, it can be so secretive, and there can also be that denial in there. And so there's just that whole mixture that comes into it of, trying to understand where you're at and how to ask for help. And so really the best thing for me was that I did, at that time, the Mother Superior at the time, I had talked to her, and she just received me with complete love, complete mercy. I went in there already crying, thinking she's going to ask me to leave. Like, I just really believed that. And I really thought, okay, Lord, like, if I can't live this, like, I desire to be yours so deeply, but I thought, if I can't live this, I need to be honest, and I need to get help. And so she really just completely received me. And that was exactly what I needed, to finally tell someone that I was struggling was huge. Took a lot of courage, but then getting sent, of course, it was a long journey, but being able to, just find that support. So through a great spiritual director, through counseling, through my formators, there was just a lot of ongoing support there that I found, which was really amazing, and is amazing even to reflect on. I'm so grateful because I see, obviously, as we're sitting here, the fruits of that, and that that it was, I just really believe that Jesus can use everything for good, even when we feel like I can't say anything. Like, you just never know what the Lord is going to do when we really let that light in. So
Absolutely. Thank you, sister. It's you're talking about that moment of going in and sharing and fearing being kicked out and all this stuff. I think that's just one of the tactics of the enemy, is just, we think that, especially by admitting it, not just struggling with it, but finally admitting it to ourselves and to others, that somehow we're closed off from God's plan for us. Like Annie kind of mentioned earlier is that it's decided for us. And it's interesting because I actually felt like religious life was the only option for me because of my past. So I thought I can never be chaste in a marriage. Ever, like I could never enter into that. So I'll be safe over here. And I remember speaking to the order that I was really inquiring with, and the sweet vocations director, she was like, yeah, that's BS. Like she was like so cutthroat about it, which was awesome. But she was direct. Yeah, she was very direct, but just the way she spoke, she was like, the Lord only acts in openness. The Lord only acts in total freedom and in openness. And I think that's, I just hear like, it's funny that it's like a similar lie wherever Satan wants to send you. It's like, he either wants you to think that marriage is closed off to you because you could never be in a loving, chaste partnership with a man, or you're closed off to religious life and to this exclusive belonging to God because of your past too. So I find it so interesting that lie can manifest in so many different ways, but it's the same lie. I don't know. Annie, any thoughts?
I just see how the exposure of the heart that comes in vulnerability with this issue that, I love to talk about vulnerability, being able to share this, all of this. There's it feels like a deeper impact of exposure when we bring into this question of vocation in whatever sense, right? It's the story of like, I'm finally going to share this with my fiance, like, or we're not going to get married, then I'm finally going to share this with this religious community. I've shared this experience with Rachael, but there's one order that I was discerning with for a bit that sort of ended communication with me because of me sharing part of my story of sexuality with them. And this was at a place that after a few years of sobriety for me. And so I remember going through my own midlife crisis at the time of am I really not over this? Because this woman seems to think that it's somehow still impacting me. And obviously I'm still healing, but obviously I feel really called to this. Could the Lord not want me? And I circled and I circled, but I remember it having a much more deep impact than if I don't know, than if I told a friend and they like didn't really care, because of this level of like putting myself out there completely. I think of promposals, the amount of effort that people put into to like put themselves out there of like, I am making it known that this is my intention. I really want to pursue this. And to be shut down is, it can poke at so much more than just this layer of exposure of sexual sin. So yeah, again, just very thankful we're addressing some of these lies because it goes so much deeper. It goes straight to that place of like, does Jesus love me, as Sister said? And that's like the core of our hearts wanting to be completely loved perfectly. And so, yeah, that's what I want to share.
Absolutely.
The Magdala podcast is sponsored by the Catholic Theology Show, presented by Ave Maria University. The Catholic Theology Show covers themes such as the value of a Catholic higher education, religious liberty, how to pray, the philosophies of St. Thomas Aquinas, and more. Stream episodes on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and learn more by visiting the link below.
Sister, do you have any tips or tools for women either discerning or who are in religious life, just for remaining in that love as they go through their healing, like making sure that that's the point they're residing in? Like what helped you? I mean, you mentioned it a bit already, but what can you suggest for the women who this might be resonating with?
Sure, exactly. Yeah, because definitely going through this is a journey. And I think firstly, the most important thing, I know it seems so obvious, and of course it's always easier to say, but just to really believe in our hearts, even if you're not feeling it, it's just reaching for that belief that Jesus loves you, and the level of trust, like giving ourselves to him in trust is so important. But really, he has to be the center of all of this journey. I think that's the point that I really want to emphasize, is that this journey of freedom, whatever it looks like, for any woman that's listening, is that Jesus has to be the center of that. So let him lead you if you're going deeper into your woundedness. Let him lead you if you're, really starting to acknowledge that sexual sin. Let him lead you if you're going to confession. He has to be the one constantly bringing them that light. That's really part of just discernment of spirits too, is it's always looking for, where's Jesus' voice? He is not going to be the one to condemn you. So I love that. I love John 8 with the woman caught in adultery, where it says that he did not condemn her. And he asked her, where is everyone, condemning you? And he says that he does not condemn her, but shows her that mercy. And that's so profound, to just really continue to go back to the gentleness and the merciful love of Jesus, and his heart and his humanity, that he wants to transform you. And that's why he wants you to acknowledge it, not to make you feel ashamed, but because he wants to help you through that journey. So that's first and foremost, just in our prayer life. Obviously the sacraments, again, some of these are all it's obvious, it's easy to state, but when we all know when we're in that place, it can feel so hypocritical. But continuing to just, being immersed in the sacraments, being immersed in Eucharistic adoration, being in his presence, so that you can kind of let yourself soak in him and be present with him. But also too, a really firm believer that he also puts those people in our path. He sends us the support that we need when we really allow ourselves to be vulnerable. I feel like he's there when, we're going to jump and he's waiting to catch us. And how he sends us that through a human face. And, he wants to give us a spiritual father, spiritual mother, that can help us to really go into those places to just acknowledge. I think acknowledgement is such a huge step. I feel like that's part of just being honest and being able to say, hey, I know this is what I'm feeling, or I know this is what I've thought, or I know this is what I've seen. And I know that I shouldn't. I think that I would do that a lot. I know myself as oh, I know I shouldn't feel this way. So, and I know that it's not really true. So I'm just going to kind of keep it over here. And not make a big deal out of it. But I had to let myself feel all those things and really share that with someone so that I could say, but this is truly what I've experienced. And even if it's a lie, or a distortion, I had to be able to face all those things. And so I think that's also a really important part of going through all those different aspects and just finding support, having community, having whether it's your own sisters, formators, if you're already in a community or you're discerning, having a bigger group. I think that was a big part of it for me in my journey as well, that kind of the missing piece was that accountability partner and bringing friendship into, again, not telling the whole world, even though here we are now, but you know what I mean? At that time, it was, not telling everybody, but just having that support. And that was, I think, the missing piece for me, where I was okay, well, I know my superiors are supposed to love me, especially by the point where I was okay, they're loving me, they're receiving me. This is what they're supposed to do. They're good at that. So I expect that from them. But I was but if everyone else really knew the truth about me, then it would change things, I thought. And so being able to open up more and just having, others that I know open up, it's just actually deepened a lot of my relationships because of being able to be honest and others being able to be honest, whether they struggled with sexual sin or just other things that they're struggling with. I think it goes back to Annie. I know you mentioned vulnerability, and I know that's just a big topic with this, area. And it's just really allowing ourselves to be vulnerable really opens up for us to go deeper, and have that reality and encounter with others.
Yeah, I'm curious. I was going to ask, were you surprised at other people opening up to you? Sometimes when you would share your story, were you surprised to find that you weren't alone as much as you thought you were, perhaps among women in religious life?
Yes, Rachel. Actually, that's a great question because I was shocked, actually. I was actually to the point where I was even mad at one point because I thought, how has Satan like gotten away with this? Like that
Yeah.
women like that this is one so common. So not only did my heart hurt at hearing people's stories, I think I was definitely very moved and led to pray more for this. But knowing that this is not uncommon, again, one led me to feel compassion for that experience that each person has is very personal. Even though we all have our similarities as well, but there's just such a personal element, especially when it comes to our sexuality. And also, yeah, like I said, I was mad because I was like, how is it that he has gotten away with this? When I'm like, we're all struggling and think like, like so many women are struggling and feel like they have to hide and they're the only ones and they've, kept this secret for so long and realizing that like this was a part of someone else's story. And that's not uncommon, whether they were actively struggling or it was something from their past. Like, I think that was the thing in sharing is that sometimes it was either or, it could also be it was in their past, but just learning that like they had also struggled with it and hearing their experiences of feeling alone. And all these just different aspects. And I'm like, wow, that could have really been like, removed or at least minimized so much more than what it had been for so many.
Yeah, I think I find more often than not, Annie, I'm not sure if you find this too. At least when I was sharing like back in the day before doing really public work with this, the response was more often me too than not. Yeah, I was surprised at first to find that out. And it's still the case. I remember one woman specifically from high school. And she and I did not necessarily get along in high school, but then re-encountering each other as adults, we've both done public work in this topic. She helped write the Behold Visio Divina book that we use in our alumni groups, and just really beautiful woman. But she and I saw each other at Seek last year, and we just had this moment of saying, like, I wish we had known. Like, I wish we had known in high school when we were both struggling and could have like encountered each other there. And obviously now there's a reason why, but it's just crazy. It's like, yeah, not only did we not get along like we should have, there was this deeper thing that we could have even like really accompanied each other on and helped each other with. So there's kind of that grieving of like, oh, why hasn't this come to the surface sooner? But then also this trust of like, it comes at the right time. It comes at the Lord's time. But I'm curious, sister, if you have any recommendations for communities as they receive women, especially, younger women. I think as younger generations are discerning religious vocations and trying to enter, we're going to see increased numbers of this. I've actually been hearing from multiple religious orders that that's the case. That's part of why the religious life curriculum interest went so up, was because I had one order tell me, they're like, if we turn down women without sexual sin in either in their present or their history, we turn down everyone. Like that's where it's getting. So I wonder if you have just any recommendations for communities, maybe vocations directors, like as they receive women with these stories, what do you think their posture should be?
Sure. Yes. Yes, Rachel. I think, like you're saying, this is just so common. That which is so sad, but again, goes back to just the reality, of where we're finding ourselves and that this is something very present. And so, just to my knowledge too of what I know religious communities are doing that maybe have been experiencing this and just good things that I think that they're doing of how they respond is something I can speak to. So just seeing how definitely being able to ask those questions up front, I think is important. But obviously, I think as any woman discerning, and this is even a little bit of pondering for myself because, that relationship with the vocation director is really, kind of that key relationship. So that's really the one that, where hopefully they're going to be able to be honest about that. So I guess it's speaking to however they can make sure that that relationship is one that is open and trusting and safe, where that woman can feel like I can actually be honest. And maybe it's even just, how do we let them know, like, hey, this doesn't mean that you're inhibited, from potentially entering and things like that. Like we said, we talked a lot about all those shameful feelings and fears. And so just being able to acknowledge, you know, the reality again that we're in and how to create that safe space. So I don't know that that's really something like black and white that we can necessarily speak to, but I think it's just creating like you were even saying, an environment, a relationship, which makes sense because we all know like healing happens in relationship. I feel like I hear that phrase a lot and I know it in my own life. And that, so it's the same thing with a community. And I think that's just a lot of ways of where they can, really make that present to young women who are discerning.
Absolutely. Annie, do you have anything to add just based on your own experiences? Anything you wanted to add?
I just wanted to hop off of what Sister just shared of that this doesn't inhibit you from entering. And the reason that we're even asking about your sexual history is just because this is such an important part of you. And we care about all of you. We care about your wholeness. I think a lot of my experience, it often felt that when I got to, I'll say that part of a questionnaire, it was like okay, this is the trick question that however I'm going to answer, it's going to be wrong. It's somehow going to disqualify me. Or they're really owning in on this question because they need to know that I can abstain for long. Sort of bluntly was like the thought process I had going in. And I think it would have been really healing and helpful if I had sisters in my corner sharing, we're asking about this because we care about all of you. And this is this is sacred. This is holy ground. This is something really deep inside you that has actually been a way that the Lord's been pursuing you. And yet Satan has twisted it in a poor way. And so being able to see the good of our sexuality that just as sister says, one, this doesn't disqualify you. I think that's been the theme of this whole thing. And two, that the Lord is desiring to go deep with you, even in that place of wounded sexuality. As sister was sharing so much about honesty, all that was going through my head. I'm sure you've had experiences of talks in your life of people sharing be honest with the Lord, be honest with the Lord. And yet the image that follows is like a church camp, drama or play. That's the character being I don't want to pray. And mom's you can pray, just tell Jesus about that you want Chipotle for lunch. And so I guess I always had the notion that being honest with the Lord, and yeah, I can share some of my desires, but you won't talk about the deep things. Being honest with the Lord is telling him, hey, I had a hard day and this person was sort of mean to me. That's being honest with them. Right? That's what someone's encouraging me to do. I don't think I ever had someone come forward to be when I say be honest with the Lord, I mean if you went too far with your boyfriend last night, you can sit down with the Lord and you can talk to him all about it because he knows he was there. He's not condemning you. He loves you. Again, that's very direct, but the Lord was there in all of those spaces and he loves us there. And so this continual encouragement to one is you're being honest with other people that, that others would receive these stories and encourage the good in them, that the Lord is in them. Let's go deeper. There's more work there. And that as we go honest with the Lord, knowing that he doesn't condemn us, that he has so much beauty of our own hearts he desires to reveal in that process. And being honest means we can go there. We can talk about these things. These aren't off limits to the Lord. He wants to hear them.
Amen. Amen. Wow. Okay. Any direct words that we want to say to the women listening? Again, whom this might be resonating with, whether that's a woman feeling an invitation to religious life, a woman feeling pushed towards it, or a woman in religious life who's wondering about her worth. Anything we want to say to her directly?
Oh, yes, definitely. I just saying, let me at her. Yes, please. And I just always feel this is, it's Jesus' heart. He just wants to speak to you and to love you where you are and to let yourself just be with him and, to not be afraid Really, I know it takes so much courage, so much courage. And so I just want to encourage you then to truly not be afraid and to not let any doubts come between you and, a possible call or a continued call to just truly be the bride of Jesus, but also a spiritual mother to others. And that, like I said earlier, he just really uses everything for good, but he firstly wants your good. Like he wants happiness for you, and he wants the beauty of who you are to be in this world. So,
Amen. Annie?
Yeah.
You are bride, period. And whether the Lord calls you to religious life, to marriage, to anything in the bubble, you are bride, period. Your sexual sin has not discounted you from that reality. Last thing I wanted to share, just very specifically, I've had multiple women in the season of discernment feel that temptation in this area has been heightened around the time of discernment. And they somehow take that as a sign that, it means I can't be called to this because I won't be able to stay, live peacefully. I just want to speak that if you're experiencing more of that, again, like go in with reverence and look a little deeper. The Lord might be bringing it up because this is the area he precisely wants to heal as you enter in deeper on this journey. This is sacred ground. So don't take temptation. Obviously, sin is a bad thing, right? But don't take temptation on the surface as something that the Lord can't work through. He works, he uses all things for good. And so looking in that space, like with reverence and sacredness, knowing that that could actually be a part of this vocational journey that the Lord's calling you on. So the Lord uses everything, even now.
Amen. Last thing I'll add is, just thinking of my own story with discernment. If any part of you is driven by fear, pause, pause, and don't listen to that part. Or listen to it and then tell it to have a seat. Like I'm thinking about how the Lord doesn't call to any vocation without a healed perception of the other, right? So he wouldn't want you to get married to a man with a skewed relationship of what a life in solitude and exclusivity with him would look like. And he wouldn't want you to join religious life with a skewed relationship of what marriage and family life would look like. So if any part of you is afraid of either vocation, visit that part, bring it to spiritual direction, bring it to counseling. Our sexual stories can just infect so much of our perception of what it looks like to be in relationship or to be in solitude with ourselves and the Lord. So I think, just any part of you that's afraid, or even I'll say like allergic or repulsed by one way of life, visit that part and see what it's trying to tell you. Like Annie and Sister are both like beautifully pointing out, that's exactly where the Lord wants to speak and where he wants to use your story for his glory and for your good. All right. Thank you, sisters, so much for joining us. I'm so glad we finally got to do this. I think we'll just do it again very soon. That's what I'm thinking.
Thanks for listening. Check out more podcast episodes, blog posts, and how to get involved with Magdala by visiting our website, magdalaministries.org. Your love is meant to change the world. We hope to see you soon.